Thank you guys for coming. This is like the most people I've ever seen in a talk of mine. So thanks for coming, first and foremost. Second off, feel free to shout out questions, comments, concerns throughout the whole presentation. The more conversational it is, the better. But so Fortune 500 Red Team initial access, why not just ask for it? So the obligatory boring stuff, the who am I? I'm AJ. I am a senior offensive security engineer on the Red Team at Praetorian. I have a few certifications that don't matter anymore. I got my bachelor's of science in computer science from the University of Mount Union, which is in the middle of nowhere, Ohio, in 2022. I'm into golf, fly fishing, esports. That man in the red HackSpaceCon hat got me into Magic the Gathering, and now I'm in financial ruin. Um, I've I've only ever seen A New Hope, the Star Wars. Like that's all I've seen. It didn't make me want to go see the other ones. I'm sorry, it was fine, and that was it. And there's my contacts if you guys want to send me threatening emails that I've never seen Star Wars before. So quick agenda so you know when I'm finally done talking. We're going to go over effective OSINT, effective organ, and effective pretexting for going and setting up your social engineering campaigns. Tying that back to actual psychology principles, so the psychology of vishing, going through a few case studies and war stories on actual Fortune 500 companies where we got access sort of just using our voices, some mitigation strategies, and then a lot of time for questions. First off, effective OSINT. So identifying targets and then actually selecting from that list targets that you're going to go and fly to, basically. The way that is the most effective to identify targets are B2B sales platforms. So like LinkedIn Sales Navigator, Apollo, Ludus, in terms of OSINT, you're not going to beat it. It does cost money, but if you could expense it, or if you find free and open source sort of adjacent versions of those, it is invaluable. Within 5 minutes, you could have roughly 1,000 users that are valid and ready to go, depending on the size of the organization, obviously. But B2B sales platforms are my go-to when I'm first starting OSINT. Company websites too, looking at bios of leadership people, press releases to get letterheads if you're going to send phishing emails out, staff directories. Sometimes smaller organizations tend to have a list of all of their emails, phone numbers, hours of work, and they do all the work for you. So the intention here is create a massive list. Find as many relevant phone numbers and names, right? You don't want to call someone and say, oh yeah, hey, are you James? And their name is like, I don't know, AJ or something. You don't want to do that, but as many relevant phone numbers and job titles as you possibly can. Now, out of that target list that you just built, find targets that match your ruse. So if I'm calling someone that from IT and I'm pretending to be a help desk operator, when I get on the phone and say, hey, I'm John from IT, they're like, I don't know a John from IT. Or worst case scenario, they say, oh, I'm right down the hall. Why don't you come to my office? Don't do that. If you're going to be impersonating an executive, don't choose their direct reports to call. If I'm calling someone and saying, hey, I'm so-and-so, I work I'm the CFO. They're like, I saw you 5 minutes ago and you sound nothing like that. So the point here is to find targets that work nicely with your ruse, and also be cautious because you don't want to get burned while you're starting your first calls. Keep it simple, right? Develop a wide spanning target list and include a variety of departments and job titles. So effective organ. So you want to identify the technologies. This is super, super important. You can do this on Glassdoor where there's often internal lingo, listing of departments, and often there's complaints on Glassdoor, more likely than not. Look at job posting for relevant tools, vendors, internal systems, and technologies. And I put Shodan up there. I don't use it, but it's good sometimes. You could find open RDP ports, see what kind of VPNs they have sometimes. But overall, just try to understand what the company uses, how the company is structured, and understanding what they're using in their tech stack. This can aid really heavily when you're going to develop your ruse, right? If you're calling and saying you're from the IT help desk and there's something wrong, what is something wrong with, right? If I call someone and say, oh, there's something wrong with your Cisco VPN and they're using Palo Alto, it's not going to work. And target selection in terms of an organization, I just mentioned this on the previous slide, but target different departments in different offices if you can. And receptionists and salespeople are, I don't want to call them low-hanging fruit because that's not nice, but they call people every day and they talk to people on the phone every day. And on top of that, they're eager to assist, and they frequently call or receive calls from random numbers, random people, and they're happy to help. So when I'm selecting certain job titles, if I see receptionist, I'm putting that on the list of the first people I'm going to call. Yeah, and we're actually going to get into those biases in a second. So thank you, that was awesome. This is another really important thing that I wanted to point out specifically for this presentation. It's important for red team operators to understand that not every successful call has to end in some sort of access. Especially your initial calls, they're going to be entirely fact-finding. Again, going back to the OSINT, there's some things that can't be found just with OSINT, right? Real world example, this was a giant red team for a giant client. I had gotten the target to browse to the payload and couldn't download it. Kept clicking on the zip file, wouldn't download it, was blocked at the browser. And I asked what was going on, and he said, well, I'm trying to download it, but it's saying Blue Coat couldn't verify it, and it's blocking the download. I'm like, okay, I had no idea that was a thing. I probably could have OSINTed it better, but sometimes, it's just not out there. We didn't factor that into the ruse, so I was kind of dead in the water. I had to say, hey, I'm gonna have to call you back, which is really important. I'm gonna get into that later. But we had to go back to the drawing board. So anytime that you make a call and you come out with new information that you didn't know previously or you didn't have revealed in open source intelligence, it's not a big win, but it's a win. And as long as it'll advance your ruses in your engineering going forward, then you shouldn't be mad at it. Any questions so far? Just to stop and pause for a second. Awesome. So effective pretexting. There's 4 or 5 different pillars that I like to use with these. Actually, the biases are on the next slide. I'm sorry. But number 1, credibility, right? Aligning with the target environment, job, role, organization structure, tech stack. And using a realistic tone, like not getting overexcited, not sounding extremely angry or anything like that, using the terminology and the realistic urgency levels, right? If I'm calling someone and I work in IT, chances are I really don't like my job if I'm just calling people and helping people out all day. So make my voice a little bit monotone, like, hey, my name's John, I'm from the IT help desk, exactly like that. No real joy in my voice. Specificity, leveraging, name dropping, right? Leveraging, naming the certain systems that they use or some of the details acquired via OSINT. So for example, I see you're on the sales team under, and then you name their boss's name, right? That adds a little bit of legitimacy to your ruse. Plausibility, it has a logical reason to exist. I'm not going to call someone saying, listen, you have 5 minutes, you have to click on this, or your computer's going to blow up, or you're going to get fired or something like that, right? That's not believable. Avoiding, like I just mentioned, the overly dramatic or inconsistent scenarios. Authority/familiarity. If I call and say, hey, I'm from the CFO's office or the security team, as long as I'm calling, the right type of person, it implies that I have some sort of power and some closeness or insider connection. Like if I mention, hey, I'm from the onboarding team or from the compliance team, or hey, I'm from legal, instantly that sort of breaks their autopilot, and maybe I should pay attention. Even if it's suspicious attention, it's still attention. And going back to the urgency conversation, adds time pressure without being overbearing, right? So we're finalizing access changes now, or within a few weeks this is going to be deactivated if no action happens. A small amount of pressure, but not an insane amount of pressure, if that makes sense. Cool. So for simplicity's sake, for this talk, let's use the IT help desk ruse. It's tried and true. You think it doesn't work, but it does. I promise you it does. It's awesome. And you can do so many different things with it. So for example, if I'm going to pose as an internal IT help desk operator, there are 3 forms that I try to go for initial access. Number 1, you could drop and detonate a payload, standard C2 access. 2, you could target CI/CD solutions. How many of you went to the CI/CD talk? So fair amount of you. It's awesome. CI/CD is attacking CI/CD is great for red teamers. And third, and certainly not least, targeting cloud personal access tokens like an Azure token to achieve a cloud-based foothold. So there's a few different things we could abuse here: GitHub or GitLab, cloud, Azure, AWS, or all 3. They all suck. Entra ID versus Okta, and going back to the VPN example, AnyConnect versus Palo Alto Global. Global Protect. Oh, I was standing on the meme. I'm sorry. Yeah, Entra is a terrible name. Why didn't they just keep it as Azure? And now we're at the point where everyone's using it interchangeably. So I've probably done that in this presentation, honestly. So 3 different scenarios here. Number 1, Azure trust or device code trust enrollment. So I would call someone saying, hey, we're updating compliance baselines and your device needs to re-enroll using a secure device code. Do you have a few minutes to navigate to microsoft.com/device login and enter just a 5 alphanumeric code for me? What that does is once the code is entered, you are given their personal access token. You now have a foothold in the network. Quick and painless. You can even tell the guy, yeah, hey, I understand you're a busy guy. This will take 30 seconds. And it does. So we at Praetorian use that quite a lot. Almost every single red team we're going and we're trying to do some form of device code enrollment. GitHub key mismatch. So call someone up saying, we're seeing token sync issues for your GitHub and GitLab account. Now, to all of you, that doesn't make sense. I know it doesn't make sense to me either, but it's worked. I need you to generate a new path and paste it here to rebind your SSO identity, right? Sometimes being overbearing with the amount of buzzwords you throw around, even to a developer, right? Sometimes it works. So the objective there is to harvest a path for repo access or pipeline/CI/CD insertion. And the last one, installing a malicious VPN config or drop a hijacked binary onto the disk saying that we're rolling out a new VPN profile for something like better load distribution. The objective here is to grab a beacon. Any questions? Awesome. So a few do's and don'ts. There's a lot here. Feel free to take pictures if you'd like. But I've sort of touched on all of these already. Natural conversational tone, fitting the ruse, building small rapport during the call, make these requests sound like a step in a already established process, and think on your feet, adjust in real time. Stuff is going to go wrong, and how you respond to it can change the outcome of your engagement. Don't rush the target. Like I mentioned, don't overuse jargon or act like extremely technical. Sometimes, brain dumping a lot of technical terms will just turn people off essentially, and they won't want to talk to you anymore. Don't talk really fast, like I probably have been doing this entire time. I'm sorry. And don't get angry. Don't demand info directly. Don't call someone saying, hey, what's your password? Is that going to work on any of you? Yeah. Now, if it still kind of works, yeah. But I tend to avoid it. And even if you're challenged or like I have someone say, oh yeah, you're a scammer, I'd be like, okay, have a nice day. Or if someone asks like, hey, can you send me an email from like an internal email, or hey, could you hit me up on Teams? I'd be like, yeah, absolutely. You should be seeing that in the next 5 minutes. And then I just hang up and never talk to them again, right? So don't break character because that raises suspicion. If you tell someone, yeah, I'm going to do it, their mind is going to go to, oh, they must have forgot or something like that. Or you could just hang up in the middle of the conversation. That's also, I mean, it's not great, but it's fine. I've done it before. Everyone that has vished before, yeah, everyone that has vished before has gotten cold feet and hung up. My first 10 vishing calls in my career, I stuttered or I said something wrong because I was reading off of a script and it didn't go the way I planned. And I started not knowing what to say, and yeah, I just hung up. And that was it. And I was like, I'm not calling this guy back. Yeah, that was in that sort of failure builds. I mean, it builds character. That's sort of naive, but it builds your skill, right? Vishing is something that you don't learn. You have to do. And once you have enough experience, it becomes second nature, which is terrifying because you're essentially just getting better at lying, but hey, we're ethical and we're bound by a code of ethics, so it's fine. Speaking of lying, so saying something like, I'm looking at a ticket you put in, and it's for your Lenovo laptop, right? Almost every single big organization uses Lenovo laptops. So I'm looking at your Lenovo laptop with serial number, and I've read off like 10 random serial numbers before, and it works. It creates an illusion that you actually have this information. Who else would have your serial number, right? Even though it wasn't correct or real by any stretch of the imagination, there's cognitive confirmation there. So either the ticket number or the serial number, they're like, yeah, that makes sense, sure. And an anchoring bias, right? Specifics like the serial, they sound official and they're rarely ever challenged. And most of the time, their computers are running slow anyway. Who doesn't love a free call from IT saying, hey, I'm going to fix your computer or make it faster or something like that? And if they don't have a ticket, I like to say, oh yeah, this was auto-generated. There was some synchronization issues depending on the ruse, right? And that's where you would pivot to the remainder of the pretext where it's feasible, right? If they say, no, my laptop's running fine, I say, okay, great. I'll go ahead and close the ticket, like act like I'm an actual IT operator, say, have a nice day, move on to someone else. So these 5 words have done so much good in my phishing career. So I always start my calls with the following the IT help desk ruse. It's, hi, John, my name's Matt, calling you from the whatever IT help desk. Am I catching you at a good time, or am I reaching you at a bad time? So number 1, using the target's first name. You should already have this with OSINT. It grabs the attention and breaks their sort of autopilot, right? If someone's calling you and they're a telemarketer, they're not going to say your name 99% of the time. So it makes them feel seen and accounted for, and reduces their defenses just a little bit. In the name bias, right? Were you the one that mentioned the name bias earlier, or was that a different one? The what? Oh, yeah, okay. This isn't that, but people are more likely to trust and respond when their name is used. And also invoking an internal team like, hey, I'm from the IT help desk, places a little bit of legitimacy behind the call right at the beginning. And they know that like, hey, I'm not going to be asking you for anything quite yet. And it sort of gives credence to why I would have your name and your phone number to begin with, and the authority bias. So people are, the idea that people tend to comply with perceived authority figures, especially in large organizations. So the question is now a good time, puts the target in control. So they have the next move if this were a chess match. It disarms the suspicion by giving them the next choice. It lowers the resistance because it's the polite thing to do. If I'm calling someone and they're not expecting it, I always ask, hey, are you busy? This is just a different way of doing that. It encourages mental reciprocity, right? Since you asked, they sort of owe you either an explanation or, the next 5 seconds to give you an answer. And this is the foot in the door technique. So small agreements like saying, oh yeah, I have some time, makes their future compliance a lot more likely. So what happens if they say no? Anyone have a guess? Yes. The callback. So when someone says, yeah, no, this isn't a good time, you have the easiest out imaginable and you can still win. So yeah, the commitment or consistency bias. People are more likely to comply if they've agreed to something in advance. So there's the trust reinforcement where you've also respected their schedule, which builds credibility. And the second call is expected now. So the defenses now went from a here to, okay, like down here now. In my experience, if I call someone back, they are 100% ready and willing to comply. By the time of the follow-up, the target feels like you're a known quantity, and they've essentially invited you in. They're mentally primed to be helpful, and your request is now seen as just a part of your job and not random or intrusive. Even targets who were skeptical at first always complied on the second interaction because it was scheduled, it was normal, it was expected. And, especially if you call them right on the dot, like on the time or a few minutes after, right? They think, oh, this guy's legit. He's actually doing his job. Like he's calling me back. It's awesome. So, yeah. The first big example, right? It was a full scope red team. There was a highly advanced SOC, IR, and blue team. No red team had ever gotten a callback. The objective was literally get in. That was it. That was the only objective. We opted to deliver a C2 payload that we were sure would get past. I can't say the EDR's name, but they really hate me. It's awesome. They have like a full like threat profile on me. It's great. I'm honored. It's awesome. So the target, I called him and said, "Hey, I'm Matt Jakowski from the the Praetorian guys got that from the IT help desk. I'm looking here at a ticket that says you have some laptop issues, right? The target did have a ticket in for printer issues. Go figure. Everyone hates printers. Does anyone here like printers? So now you're social engineering me because you're lying. Okay. That's awesome. I'm glad you love printers. I hate printers. Oh yeah, yeah, they're awesome in that way, right? Yeah, yeah. But like, have you ever got a printer to do what you wanted it to do that wasn't hacking on the first try? Exactly. Yeah, printers are great for hackers, right? But outside of that, they're useless. So I pivoted and said, yeah, great. Yeah, this will fix that printer problem. Do you have a few moments to walk this through with me? It won't take more than 5 minutes. Your workstation fell out of sync with Active Directory. That doesn't happen. And IT has been internally working on a solution that we're rolling out in form of a sync tool. So how stupid does that sound on a scale of 1 to 10? You could be completely honest. Yeah, no, it's so awful. Yeah, yeah, it's awful. They have no idea. It's going to fix all your issues, right? It's going to fix all your issues. And I know it sounds stupid to us, but it works. It works so much. Walter's another individual on our red team here. How much does this work? Yeah, yeah, it's great. Yeah, right. Yeah, going with the OSINT and the organ, right? Like these pretext, and thank you for bringing that up because right, exactly. But yeah, these pretexts work because we did all the work prior before. Yeah. So we walked them through browsing to the payload delivery website, and I touched on this a little bit. And the target said, yeah, Blue Coat's blocked this download. I don't have permission to scan it to actually download it. So pivot time. I said, okay, no problem. Can we try one more thing? And I got this guy to walk through the entire Azure device code flow. Didn't work. It was blocked at the organization level. It's like, okay, can I call you back tomorrow at the same time? We regrouped internally to see what was going on, and we tried to cook up some bypasses to Blue Coat. The solution was HTTP smuggling. So instead of downloading data through the browser, let's just stream it right to their device. We stood up a web page, posted it on a trusted site, and downloaded the payload just fine. Blue Coat said, yeah, it looks good to me, dude. And worked. So we received the callback, and we are the first red team to get internal access to this Fortune 500 organization in over 5 years, which was awesome. So second case study was a Fortune 500 medical team, full scope red team, another highly advanced SOC, IR and blue team. Again, the objective was to get in, just to get in. So we started with device code smishing for Azure or Entra, or I don't want to go down that road. So we got names, phone numbers, departments, serial numbers, and Entra group memberships. So we were triaged and evicted from Entra like literally 5 minutes after Road Recon did its thing. It's really loud. And they were like, yeah, this looks weird. Why is someone querying the Graph API like 700 times in the last hour? That never happens. So let's at least try and put that data to good use. So I called and say, hey, this is Matt from the help desk. Is now a good time? I'm calling regarding this ticket for your Lenovo laptop with a serial number, but I read off their actual serial number. The user looked under her laptop, verified that that was her actual serial number, and I could have told her to throw her laptop out the window. And she would have. If I said jump, she'd ask how high. Like, that's how awesome this was. So Entra. It was in an Entra field under their user. Yeah. And so the C2 implant was installed. It called back. A few hours later, it died because she shut her laptop down. And I called them back at like 9 p.m. It was like, hey, I'm so sorry to bother you at this time. Could you rerun that for me? Got another call back. And then when it died again, I went and got another PRT from them. So like, again, I could have told her to like mail her laptop to me, and she probably would have. So sometimes when you have information from, some other form of social engineering or OSINT or something, and it's correct and you read it to them, that's all they need. It's like like having the master key for everything. Yeah. Yeah. And that also happens too. Like, yeah, I'm from the help desk. All right. Sounds good to me. Um, yeah, it's awesome. And you'd think this doesn't happen to large, really mature companies, but it does. Um, these are Fortune 100 companies. I just put 500 in there to anonymize it a little bit more, but they're giant companies, and with highly advanced SOCs and IR teams and blue teams, and sometimes all it takes is a little smooth talking, and now you're just into these organizations. So how can we prevent this, right? Number one, ban ad hoc credential sharing, period, over the phone. So, make sure that if you're running an organization or you're involved in the SOC of an organization, make sure that you let everyone know that IT is never going to ask for credentials, MFA codes, or device enrollment codes without a ticketed process that they would receive via email, via SMS, something like that. And moreover, teach some soft skill red flags. So some urgency, or like a ticket with no paper trail, right? Or name dropping, saying, "Hey, I work at the CFO's office," and there's no clear context. Right? I'm just opening up with, "Hey, I'm from the help desk," right? Why? Ask why. And if there's inconsistent or evasive explanations, right? It's really easy to spot. And there's the trust but verify principle, but let's do verify and then comply instead. Normalize the behavior of a polite rejection, or making sure, hey, I'm going to have to call you back, or let me ask someone, when, someone is calling you for some suspicious request, or even an internal source, right? If an IT individual is going to call someone and they say, "Hey, yeah, let me just verify you're actually within the organization before I go ahead," that's awesome. You should reward them. And limit phone-based auth where, oh, did someone have a question? I'm sorry. Yeah. Awesome. Because we have had awesome if people buy into it. Let me rephrase. Because last year for another organization, we had someone get really like into it with someone with phishing, and then they're like, "Oh, I forgot what's the code word," and the guy was like, "What?" And Walter knows what I'm talking about with the PIN number. There was a PIN number of the day, and it was shut down from there. And it was a 50-50 between whether someone would actually ask for the PIN number or not. And so I think it's effective if people buy into it, because I don't know what the code word of the day is. An attacker won't unless they have some sort of insider knowledge. So yeah, I think it's awesome, but only if people use it. Anyone else? Cool. So yeah, verify then comply, and limiting phone-based auth where possible. So texting you a code, instead of, or not texting you a code and using an app-based MFA like Authy or MS Authenticator or Google Authenticator, pick your poison, as opposed to SMS-based MFA. Anomaly detection tools too, like with the Road Recon story, with the unusual login and token use querying intra 700 times, that got us evicted really quickly. That's really effective. Establishing I can't talk today, man. An escalation path for suspected social engineering, right? If someone receives a call that's somewhat shady or a little suspicious, the employee's got to know where, when, and how to report those calls, so a memo can get put out. Analyzing patterns, so recurring pretext like a device sync pretext, in the patterns of who people are impersonating. Like if someone's calling you from the help desk, they're not from the help desk, right? Getting those memos out strengthens not only preventing it, but implementing some sort of detection rules, like looking for newly minted PRTs, or PATs, can strengthen organizations, just because, number one, if it does happen, you're looking for a PAT. Number two, the employees know, like, this is what they're trying to do. a mandatory greeting, like you just said, right? Like a code word that includes a verification code or a callback number. And lastly, sort of caller ID masking to flag unknown, like internal looking numbers, like with the same area code or something like that. And this already sort of happens by default, but internal phone calls and UC platforms like Teams with an internal verified indicator. So like, you know, if the caller is from the organization or not. So with that, I will open it up to questions.